So we're on Whitehall, leading up to Downing Street. And there's the entrance to Horse Guards Parade. If you're ever here during the day, you might see one of David Garcia's tours, London. You might see the guards out there during the day, and people in front of them trying to make them laugh or talk. But this is Whitehall, and we're taking a left down a road called Great Scotland Yard. Now, for any Harry Potter fans, I'm going to try and get a view for us here. If you know the film The Deathly Hallows, I think it's part 1, when Harry, Hermione and Ron drink polyjuice potion. This is the view that Ron is looking at as he's looking down towards the Ministry of Magic. Just there. So Great Scotland Yard was home to the police force for many years. And there's some of them there. And a lot of the police horses are in stables just around here as well. Now, we hear about Scotland Yard all the time, but Scotland Yard is now a little bit further down. There's New Scotland Yard, but this is Great Scotland Yard. It's possibly where the phrase Great Scott comes from, which is an old Victorian phrase. When people exclaim, they say, Great Scott! The architects Inigo Jones and Christopher Wren lived around here, but what we're looking at directly in front of us is the Civil Service Club, which opened in 1953. Now, the civil servants are the office-based workers of the government. The first job I ever had, which wasn't a Saturday job, was working for the civil service. And it was my now brother-in-law and my sister who got me the job there when I was 18, near the Tower of London, just opposite. And if you are a member or have been a member of the civil service, you are working for the government in an office capacity, and you get automatic membership of this club no matter when you join the civil service. But you have to pay for the club, of course. But the civil servants raised money in 1953 for the Queen's wedding to the Duke of Edinburgh. And as a thank you for the money that was raised as a present and the 2 silver trays that they bought her and Prince Philip, she bought them their own club. And they often call it the Sanctuary, so that they can make sure that they can chat in here and have a drink and have a meal, and MPs, members of Parliament, are not allowed in. So it's a break from the politicians. Now again, just to look down, this is another one of those roads that can be filmed with only a little bit of CGI or early morning, and you can make it look quite Victorian. The film Atonement had a few scenes set here, and also a car chase in a couple of the Bond films. Looks nice. Looks nice, the light this time of night. Let's carry along. 18 years old when I was a civil servant. Such a respectable job, 18 years old. And look at me now, wandering the streets for a living. Who would have thought it? Now, Sherlock Holmes, as we know, didn't exist. Created character, as was this pub. It's a pub from the 1800s, but in the 1950s, 1957, it was named the Sherlock Holmes. And inside, they've got Sherlock Holmes' study, so Holmes and Watson's study upstairs, and the top floor is made to look out exactly like Sherlock Holmes' room would have been. It's a nice pub. I was planning, and I know a few of you have said this to me, to do a tour based around Sherlock Holmes. But there are so many locations in London, some of them are so far apart, it's taking a bit of work. So I will get there. I might call it Sherlock Holmes and the Beginnings of Detective Fiction or something. Now, we're wandering up to the Playhouse Theatre. Just wanted to show you the Corinthia Hotel. I don't know if there's anyone from Budapest on the tour, but I believe there's a Corinthia Hotel in Budapest as well, which looks exactly like this. I had a TV show on ITV a few years back all about this hotel. The rooms in here, some of them are £10,000 a night. So maybe after tonight's contributions, I might spend a night here. One of those hotels, as you walk in, there's a piano straight in front of you. And earlier on, there was somebody playing a piano. Oh, it's lovely. Yeah, I don't think they'll let us in there. So in front of us, we have the Playhouse Theatre. I wanted to show us something else just before that. So a lot of writers have lived in this area as well. A lot of diarists. The diarist John Evelyn, who wrote about the plague and the English Civil War, he lived in this area. But most famously, Samuel Pepys did as well. It seems that every single walk I take, every single tour, I say Samuel Pepys lived in the area. He just seemed to turn up everywhere. He wrote the diary for 9 years and gave us a lot of information about culture and people's eating and drinking and entertainment habits. But just here is a house that Herman Melville, the writer of Moby Dick, lived in 1849. He would have hung out in this area. There would have been ships, there would have been boatmen hanging around here because he was so close to the river. 2 years later, he wrote Moby Dick. So it's possible that it was all inspired from living in this house. Okay, let's go back down so we can see the Kit Kat Club, otherwise known as the Playhouse Theatre. So it's showing Cabaret at the moment, if you don't know the Kit Kat Club, starring Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley, great Irish actress. So it's all been made to look like a club. And the entrance is around the side, and what would have been the stage door for any other show. But I'm going to stand in the middle of the road on a traffic island so we can get a good view of it. But the show has started. Everyone has to queue up just in front of us here, and they go in through a side door. Quite a cool way of doing it. And when you go in, nobody sat in regular theatre seats. They've done out the auditorium, the ground floor anyway, stalls, so it looks like a cafe stroke Berlin nightclub in the 1930s. Nice way of doing it. I did a play here, 1984. That wasn't the year I did it in. I wasn't born. No, I did a play called 1984 here about 5 years ago. If you know the story of Winston Smith and O'Brien, his torturer, it was a difficult run because there was no laughter to be had on stage. All the dressing rooms in the Playhouse Theatre face each other down one corridor. So we had this idea very early on in rehearsals to buy some artificial grass, and in the corridor where all the dressing rooms met, we put the artificial grass down and we put bunting and little cafes and stalls up, and we called it the Village Green. So in between shows, we'd sit out in deck chairs on the Village Green. So it was a nice way of getting through it. So this is our Playhouse Theatre. And a lot of people have asked me over the years, how did they create the rats in the cage? Well, it was clockwork. It was animatronic. And the guy playing Winston, when he was all tied up, holding the cage full of rats, would press a button anytime the rats were supposed to make noise, and these clockwork rats inside would run around and a speaker would go off. Quite clever. And then we've got Embankment Place right in front of us. Got a cabman's office. Wouldn't be big enough for a horse and carriage, but it's big enough for 12 men, as it would have been in the old days, to sit and have a cup of tea. And it's going to reopen very soon. It's been closed for a little while during the pandemic because you can't socially distance in that. And then just behind us, I just want to show you one of 3 bridges which are right next to each other. Hungerford bridges. There are 3 of them. There are 2 footbridges and there's 1 rail bridge in the centre. These bridges were created to hide the rail bridge, which is on our left, from public viewing because it's quite an ugly bridge, and they thought it's nice to have 2 footbridges, 1 either side. And I wanted to leave us with a couple of nice views of London. On the right hand side, something called the London Eye, changes colour periodically throughout the night. It's a nice view. The river, as we said, would have been quite a bit wider. So over the years, it started to flow in this area quite rapidly. But if you went to areas like Putney or Kew, the river still stays like a lake because there are the old muddy riverbanks still there. If anyone's been on one of my Southwark tours, you may know that this also looks like the Millennium Footbridge, but this one doesn't wobble. So you can hear the trains on the left going from Charing Cross all the way to Waterloo, or Waterloo East, and then on to London Bridge and out to the southeast. So I thought I'd leave us with a nice view of the west, and in particular Westminster Bridge right in front of us.